This is my 2006 Volkswagen TDI Beetle. It's a BEW engine, Pumpadooza, obviously. I got 470,000 miles, I think, currently. Recently, the original anti-shudder valve, or as the manual calls it, the intake air flap, I think it is, valve, the plastic gears inside stripped, and it was making a crazy buzzing noise while it was running, and it wouldn't close, so it would shudder when you turn it off. So no codes, no nothing, the engine running fine. So I bought a brand new Pierberg replacement, installed it, and while I had it up here in the shop, I went ahead and I had a brand new Vallejo starter sitting on the shelf. The old one here was weak, so I went ahead and replaced it too. This wasn't uncovered. I just did that last night. I'll get to that in a minute. So anyway, replaced the starter, replaced the anti-shudder valve, fired it up. Everything ran great, just like usual. Except I got a OBD2 trouble code for P2100, I think it was, which was throttle actuator no signal, which has to be related to this, I would think. So I started investigating a little further, checking, the condition of wiring. I verified that I had power. I had power and ground at the plug here, and it was moving. So the computer's telling it what to do, but it says no signal. So I thought, well, it's got to be the part. I didn't have that code in the first place. So I contacted the vendor. They were super cool. They sent me another one immediately. I sent them the other one back. I just installed it a couple nights ago, and I have a different code, P3102, which is says again no signal at this deal. And so then I started thinking, uh-oh, I must have a wiring issue. So I did, I got out my VCDS and I did a little more in-depth troubleshooting. And sure enough, I did a scan here and I see the air flap, which is V157. That's what we're talking about, P3102. But also, I've got no power to the EGR cooler valve, N345, intake manifold changeover valve, the N75 valve, or solenoid, whatever that is. Intake manifold flap again, separate code. So I get out the good book here, the Bentley Bible, and I go back to, let's turn this on. I go back and find V157, that's our anti-shudder valve. It gets its power from 159. 158 is a related circuit next door that powers each of those other items. Well, this one's not, but the N345 and N75 are on my list of trouble codes. So I go over to here and I see that, where's that at? Fuse 34 comes down and powers both of those circuits, 103 and 105, directly. So 103 is our shudder valve. 105 are the other items along that list of trouble codes. And so I assume we have a break in continuity somewhere between the fuse and these two circuits, because you should have power coming in, and then it branches off to these other items. So, last night I come out here and I start taking the entire harness loose and uncovering everything I can. And I thought, well, maybe I pulled on this too hard or something while I was replacing, the starter or something. The wire's super old, it's got 500,000 miles on it. So I checked everything. I spent several hours going through this. I don't see any issues with wires whatsoever. Everything down here is nice and clean, and it's not brittle. It's there's no obvious damage anywhere. So then I got up to, forgive my ignorance, I don't know what this is. I don't know if this is a pressure regulator of some sort or what. My expertise is not with Volkswagen diesels, it's with LS engines and gas powered stuff. But anyway, so as I was plugging all this back in and questioning my life choices, I realized it's taped up now, but the two wires coming out of this plug had a teeny tiny little frayed spot where they were touching and they vibrated together for 500,000 miles. And I'm sure at some point they were making contact with each other. So that plug, this plug, the plug on my shutter valve, and a couple other pieces, they all get power from this yellow wire. This one has a yellow wire too. And they all have continuity with one another and with fuse 34. So I was thinking, okay, well, bingo, I've got a break somewhere between here and fuse 34, but I don't, because I have continuity between all of these things. So once I realized I had this frayed spot here, I taped it up, isolated the two wires, taped them up. I'm gonna do a little better job when I get this all sorted out. And so then I ran another scan to see if that resolved any of my connectivity issues. So in doing so, here's my next scan. And we got rid of all the problems except for that brand new intake manifold flap that I just put on. We still have a P3102, no signal from that brand new part. So I have verified, at this point, I have 12 volts on the yellow wire. I have ground to the ground wire. That leaves 2 signal wires coming from the PCM, which I have followed down here as best I can. As a matter of fact, they are probably these right here. There's a blue, green, and there's a black and red. Those go back up to the PCM. I cannot find any visible breaks down here. The only other thing I know to do is to pull the PCM and check for continuity between that end of the wires and this end of the wires. But that still wouldn't necessarily rule out a problem with the PCM. But anyway, none of this started until I replaced that valve. But I'm afraid if I go back to the vendor and I tell them that this valve is defective, they're going to think I'm an idiot. So I want to 110% positively rule out anything else before I do that. So my question is, what else can I do to rule out the PCM and or the signal wires from the PCM? Is there a output test procedure or something like that within VCDS that I can use to operate this valve manually and then check values on it or something and see if it's reading its position? Because it seems like it's getting power and it's working. I mean, it shuts off when you turn the key off, the valve closes, the anti-shutter function works, but it says no signal. And so I just don't know what else to do to eliminate everything except this part. I'm considering, there's a guy, he's a couple hours away from me, but I'm considering going and buying a used valve and plugging it in. If the code goes away, it's a new valve. If it doesn't go away, then I need to keep investigating. But any input would be very much appreciated. This is the first issue I've ever run into with this engine that I couldn't just resolve on my own. So any help would be great. Thanks.